I basically make out like my book is largely about my incredible observations of Canary Wharf and London. And largely what it is that I got dumped and I drank some wine and I wrote a collection of poems. Because that's usually, there's so much bullshit that we give. It's, the watchful eye of Canary. No, I got dumped. And I wrote some shit. And Canary Wharf has genuinely always fascinated me as an area, and I think it would be really cheap of me to say that it's a reclamation, because something that is that white, that imperialistic and that patriarchal, I don't want a part of. So it isn't a reclamation. But what it is that my dad used to be a labourer for a lot of my childhood, and you couldn't pass the fucking building without him talking about how it was built and how it was designed, and kind of wanting something better for ourselves. And so it's always fascinated me because I grew up watching it grow up. And what it does, and I think there's a very human kind of part of us that we're so fucking nostalgic, and we just, we do this, whether it's with a crisp packet or a car or a venue or a petrol station, we put our past onto things, and we think about those boys that we used to date and those people we should have married and those birthdays that we went to and those friends who died and all kinds of shit we remember and we think about when we're walking around. And that is largely what the collection is around, and it uses Canary Wharf as an allegory of that. But it really is just about nostalgia and about kind of remembering ourselves and remembering who we are. There's a photo that will come up eventually. These are crappy photos that I've taken. So basically, I'm shit at directions, but you can take a photo of Canary Wharf and send it to me and I'll know exactly where it's taken. So last night I was walking home and I couldn't remember how to get home, but I could tell you that at the end of the road, there was a really nice view of Canary Wharf to the right, but I didn't know where that was in relation to my own house. This photo here, I didn't take this. It's too stunning for something for me to have taken. But it's Greenland Pier. Does anyone know Greenland Pier? One of you knows Greenland Pier. It's amazing. It's opposite Canary Wharf. And does anyone use the riverboat? It's two of you. Brilliant. It's an incredible place, and I urge you to go and see it. And it's near Surrey Quays, and everything, it just looks like, it looks like the future, but as the 80s imagined the future to be. And this is a poem that was largely inspired by this general view, and it's called Take the Time, Heron. To understand why we are here. I have shown you the marina now on our left with the water we mustn't touch. Beside us, the perfect outlines of a glow stick town, an unmissable constellation of argon, but I must ask you, Heron, to not eat the yogurt pot. You were found on the side of the road. The round edges of the plastic will push through your drainpipe neck until it is scratching, tapping at your intestines and taking apart your heart. I am showing these boats to you, Heron, imagining the coastlines drawn in childish, vertical blue pencil. Here, we will sail the world. And it is usually as the peaks of daylight arrive that the lights in office windows are switched off, and so the sky is emptied of stars. Do not let me eat the yogurt pot, Heron. I have tried it once before. So I'm going to take you into like a clip of a very short and very depressing song, and that will lead into my next poem. So whenever that's ready. So depressing.
Ne me quitte pas. Il faut oublier, tout peut s'oublier, qui s'enfuit déjà. Oublier le temps des malentendus et le temps perdu, à savoir comment.
Does anyone recognize it? You're just as depressing as I am. That's cool, I like that. So for anyone who didn't know, it's Ne me quitte pas by Jacques Brel, and there's this obscenely like depressing video clip of him like intensely looking into the camera whilst weeping. And I haven't had the best of luck in relationships, I don't think, up until quite recently. And it was a guy that I was loosely seeing, but it was all really intense, and it was in Deptford, and we could see Canary Wharf kind of from a distance, and we spent all our time talking about other people we were in love with, which was something quite refreshing in itself anyway. And then he was like, you must listen to this poem, and you're like, oh God, I wish I was on drugs, this is really awful. And this is, And this is called Wearing Hooves. We spoke openly of not loving the other. To be more precise, we spoke of those we loved instead. He described her hair, black. He impressed fingers upon it. Her speech, a powerhouse mimicked by well-oiled recollections. Him, almost handsome, crumpled, misplaced behind hands too vast for their weight. Turning my face to the screen, the image sang somewhere behind us. I shall tell you about those lovers who saw twice, their hearts go up in flames. Tears, a draped blanket covered time, and let me become the shadow of your shadow, the shadow of your hand, the shadow of your dog. He wept. The windows beyond windows, they watched us. And beneath them, away from it all, just listen, he said. Does anyone know Leonard Cohen's The Smoky Life? And the lyrics are, it's light enough to let it go, so let it go. So I got dumped through that song once, where someone texted me the fucking lyrics to that song to be like, it's loud enough to let it go, so let it go. Which is really fucking depressing. And so this is called Cultivating. And when you offered that pained expression through a bus window, I suppose you would have already known that you were done. Something you would later blame me for, although you had already decided she would be your life, the messages, the language lessons. You were kind to say the foxes reminded you of me, but what you really meant was they walked lost when others were asleep. And when the fox gave birth in my garden, I watched them like rats suckle. She beneath shade of damp leaves, blinking at daytime, unafraid to be in sight. Well done, I thought. You've come a long way. You're a very kind and very obedient audience. The next song that I'm going to introduce is also really depressing, but I imagine that you don't know it as well. It's by a singer called Cem Karaca, who's a Turkish singer. I don't know if anyone familiar? No, okay, just me. And it's amazing. So when they're ready and when you're all ready, I hope you appreciate the first 20 seconds of that.
Kara dudum, çatal karam, çingen.
There's something really amazing about being able to listen to play Turkish music in a room like this. Cem Karaca is basically, he's a Turkish singer. He passed, I think, in the last 10 years. But he was considered like a revolutionary poet, and a lot of his stuff was very theatrical. And I grew up listening to him. My dad loved him. My grandmother loved him. And I remember my dad, because Turkish people are very fatalistic and they think that everything's mapped out for them. And I remember my dad saying, I knew the day that Cem Karaca died because I felt it. I felt the need to listen to his music in the car. And to touch very briefly on what Sam was talking earlier about religion, is that you don't actually have to be religious for religion to be put on you. And you don't have to be religious to be treated like you're religious. You don't have to be Muslim to be treated like you're Muslim, and to be treated with a level of suspicion in this country. And some of the poems that I'm going to do are going to lead on to that. My partner works in the city, unfortunately for all his sins. And this is legitimately based around a conversation that I had with his boss. It's called Smolensky's. I am wearing the patterned leggings purposefully to irritate the straight cuts and tulips. Expensive in my hand, the wine no tastier than the ice cubes drowning inside. Well done for following your dreams is something they like to say. But his boss made his way up from an estate, and don't you forget it. Everyone is given a heads up out here, taking it offline, drilling and backfilling like the dentist who lives below me. He catches the tattoos on my arms, their Ottoman shapes, and in his best phone-answering voice, he saved this one for last. Islam, sell it to me. Yeah, that's the fucking world that we live in. This is called Dear Boss from Smolensky's. I could smell my grandmother on Morris Street. A familiar smell of heat and sweat, and Molokhia, which itself smells of heat and sweat. And in the car garage under the arches, her smell walked with me. When the strange man tried to grab my legs on seeing the short side brave for the first time this season, I heard her voice, saw my father, a child, run, and my grandfather follow. Why have you stopped? I imagine he would have asked. So my grandmother tells us all really, for it was she who was the storyteller, that she would rather stand still than be made to walk behind any man. And her smell accompanies me home until I stir it into my tea with the wooden spoon she left me. It was her land they were busy fighting for, and no one noticed the old thinning headscarves in her cupboard, cared for or wanted, and I drank the tea, remembering them neatly folded in my wardrobe upstairs. This is the poem that I'm going to leave you with, and the reason why that song came into play is because I was listening to it on the train back when I started to first write this poem in my head. And the circumstances around it were so fucked up because I needed to go and get my passport for a family emergency. And my husband, who didn't grow up here, whose mother isn't English, but he's like tall and blonde and looks like Nick Carter, and I only said that so you know that I'm with someone who looks like Nick Carter, had to do it in the same week. And he had no problem. He was cool. He got it done in like a day. And I spent days and days and days trying to get my passport. And I was born here, but my parents aren't born here. And I was having to jump through hoops to prove my parents' right to be here. Whether they have a right or not is irrelevant, right? Because I was born here. And I'm jumping through hoops. And I get to this desk, and I'm not religious, and I don't believe in God, but let me say that God moves in mysterious ways, because when I got to the desk, I got this Muslim girl. And she's there, and she goes to me, they told me they can't, she's like, there's something on your note that says I'm not allowed to renew your passport. I'm like, why? She's like, I don't know. There's just something on it. I know what that something is. That something is my surname. That's what's on that passport. That's why I'm not allowed to renew it, right? And she says to me, why do you need to go out there? And I said, my cousin's going to die in the next 24 hours, and I need to get, the funeral will be in the same day. And she said, it's fine, you know, us Muslim sisters, I get it. You need to be there. You need to be there for this. She said, I don't care what they say about what's on this paper, that I can't renew it for you, I'll renew it for you. And thank God that happened. And this is called the altercation. The altercation was never truly about the Oyster card. That the machine had summoned noise as though to rattle coins in my pocket incorrectly, it was not entirely because of his tone. An office chair turning into creaks, churlish, the hair on his nose confined by dark jeans and lapels upturned. When had moccasins become trend again? The feud was not, as he had said, because of my attitude. Behind us, inaudible bellows, Evening Standard. From the train, I thought of your deaths. On a platform above Millwall Stadium were minarets, where you imagined them. Thank you very much for your time.